So I'm just live streaming a broadcast to our YouTube channel, and maybe because it will be recorded, it will be easier for you guys to come back and just have a revision of what we are doing. Yeah, so thank you very much. And today we're just going to look at introduction to filmmaking. This being a makeup class, I know we've been covering quite a lot about filmmaking, but as a person who has just joined the filmmaking industry, as I said earlier, it's very important for you to know, the things that you're supposed to know in film industry. For instance, one of the very important, what types of films can you make, and what types of films are we really focusing on right now. And if you want to make the other types of films, so what kind of skills do you need to be able to do that? When you're able to know these things, they really help you moving forward to actually be able to do things in the right way, make films, and be able to understand what you're actually doing. Now, normally our class has actually been very much focused on, just looking at the cinematic language, because cinematic language is very important. It's the language which filmmakers have actually been using to communicate with their audiences for years. So it's very important for you to be able to understand this language. What is that language, and what goes on when you're trying to make a film. And for you to be able to understand this language, we've been able to come from very far, where we were able to look even at the origin of motion picture in itself, where we were able to look at the camera and understand how the camera works, understand the similarities between the camera and the human eye, though it was just at an introductory level. And we are going to continue doing this and understanding, this in detail. Then we were also able to look at the history of cinema in itself, from where we started making films to where we are at the moment. And we're also able to define what is a film camera. We're able to understand issues to do with resolution, because resolution is very key, because it differentiates between different kinds of videos. For instance, when you're doing TV, there's a different resolution. When you're doing film, there's a different resolution. So basically, we were able to look at the different kinds of resolutions that can be used in filmmaking as well. And we're also able to see what is not feasible for filmmakers, for other people. So that's very important. Agrippa, mute your mic. Okay. Okay. So we're able to understand, what is also feasible for filmmaking, what is also not feasible for filmmaking. That is very, very important. Now, the other thing that is very important when it comes to into filmmaking is we were also able, like, to start identifying what are these characters of film. And we were able to look at films depending on light, films creating an illusion of movement, and films manipulating space and time. And we were able to identify those special characteristics in film. Then we were able to move further and look at the types of films that we have, and the types of films that we have, including animation films, documentary films, fiction films, and experimental films. And we were able to see that actually, when you're bringing in lots of your creativity, and when in a film class, maybe the easiest things for you to learn is how to do fiction or non-fiction films, because those are things that you can actually be able to do, even as you continue with your training. You can be able to do that very easily. Let me see. I don't know why I can't add Edwin to the studio. This is really okay. Edwin, can you try to come off and come in again? Because I don't know why I'm not able to add you to the broadcast. Okay. Sorry about that. I'm trying to see if I can now be able to add. Oh, okay. Edwin, I don't know what you did to your settings. It's like you changed your settings. Now I can't add you to the screen. Let me try. Uh, okay, Edwin, I'm sorry about that.
That's
I
fine.
thank God I've been able to add you to the
Yeah,
studio because I like to have an
sorry.
interactive class. Yeah, so that's okay now. Okay, so yeah, so today we are going to start our makeup class by looking at you know, which is very important, being able to look at, you know, what are some of these elements of cinematic language that are usually used by filmmakers to actually make fiction films. And I was talking about the difference between documentary and all the other films. And now we are looking at the fiction films, which require the most hands-on knowledge to be able to make. Number one, because as a filmmaker, you get the opportunity to really apply your creativity and be able to really help out in terms of the things that are happening in a film, and that really helps you a lot. So basically you're able to actually continue to contribute to the creative process. So let's talk about a few things that are very important. And last time we started by talking about the story. Now, when you're making a fiction film, the story becomes very important. But as I defined last time, the story is always very big, no matter what angle you take it. If you want to talk about the soil, or if you want to talk about something else, the story becomes very, very important. Why does the story become very important? It's because the story is, where you're getting your inspiration from. And we said the story of Rachel started before she was born until when she has lived. So if you were to tell a movie, to make a movie about entire life of Rachel, it will be very difficult for you because you'll be forced to address different themes that you don't want to address. But however, if you want to continue making a story of Rachel, you need to be able to choose what is the best part of the story of Rachel that you need to be able to tell, which is the plot. And now I'll be talking to you mostly today about the elements of a movie's plot, because the plot is what you choose to tell in Rachel's story. So, and that's what the viewers will see. So, when you're writing your synopsis and everything, you're writing things that are within the plot of your film, which is very important. So, when you're moving ahead, trying to make your film and trying to decide on the plot of your film, it's very important for you to discover the plot order. The plot order is very important because we have two types of plot orders, and the plot order that you choose will really determine how the viewers will respond to your story. I'm sure most of you have been, in a situation where you find yourself watching a film and you just keep having more questions and more questions and more questions, and you keep asking yourself, so what can I do to answer this question? I've got to keep on watching the movie. So every movie has a plot order. We have two types of plot orders for movies. One, we have what we call the twisted plot order, and then we have what we call the straightforward plot order. So the twisted plot order is very important because the twisted plot order means that events in your movie have to start from the beginning to the end, but in the twisted plot order, you keep twisting us. You keep taking us to the future, to the present, to the past, until you answer all our questions at the end. The straightforward plot order is the opposite, where you just tell us the story simply from the beginning to the end. And for you to understand plot order, I have to talk to you about something called the dramatic structure of a movie story. And this is the same dramatic structure that is also used for theater, actually. So it's like it can go across theater and film, only like the way it is implemented is very different. So every story begins with something we call an exposition. So an exposition is the beginning of your movie, which is like an introduction of your movie. So the introduction of your movie is like when you just start with an event that introduces the main conflict of the movie. For instance, Rachel goes to swim in the forest with her friends, and then she discovers, oh, all my friends are vampires. So that's what we call an exposition. Or a couple gets married and they live with a car written just married. A few yards down the line, as they're driving, they have an accident and one of the partners die, and then now the movie begins. So obviously that event that you have in your movie that introduces your movie is called the exposition. And the exposition helps you a lot because it helps you to tell people the background of your story. It's just like the way when you start to write a proposal, you will start to write a proposal, and then obviously in the beginning you have to give a synopsis of what is somebody expecting in your movie, and that's called the exposition. So I don't know whether you guys have had an experience watching a movie and you saw an exposition. Do you see that when you're watching a movie every time? Just wanted to confirm whether you can identify the exposition in the movies that you watch. Have you ever been able to see that every movie has something that introduces the conflict? Agrippa? Hello? Yeah, okay, no, Agrippa, you're on the road. Yeah, so every movie has actually like a conflict, like a story that introduces the conflict of the story, which is very important. Edwin, have you been able to
Yeah,
identify the exposition of a movie you've watched?
yes, a lot of movies actually even they use the cinematic kind of lighting and setting to like set an introduction. And there's always a major event that happens, then you're either taken to back in time, and you can even see them writing, 19, or sometime in the future or either in the past.
Okay, so Edwin, I wanted to ask you a question. When you watch this first event, does it end with a complication or does it end with a good event? This
No, it
part.
gives you it introduces more questions to the viewer, and I
Yeah.
get a bit more curious, and that's where I start maybe making even assumptions of what will happen next, and it glues me to watch even more.
And I wanted to ask you another question. Like when you're watching a movie, like what are some of the shocking things that just like shocking turn of events that happen in the exposition, and then you just find yourself shocked, like you didn't think, you thought this was a love story, and then it turns to be a tragical story, or maybe you thought this is a good story and then it ended up being a crime story. Have you ever seen something like that? Maybe you can give us an example.
Yeah, like for example, in the series You, where this
Mm.
guy Tom is very psychotic, but in the beginning you can't really tell because he's a sweet guy, he's very friendly, and but at the back of the of his mind, he's thinking of how to. Uh, he's very obsessed over a girl who she wants to put in his basement and forced to love him. Yeah, so he ended up doing questionable things that maybe in the beginning I didn't think he was able to do.
Exactly. But that major event when he starts doing the first psychotic act now introduces you to the story, right? The
Can you hear
first
me?
time his psychotic behavior. Hello, Edwin, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I'm saying, so the first
Yeah, I can hear you
time that
now.
character does their shows their psychotic behavior is when the movie begins, isn't it? Because there was a small that event that
Indeed.
introduced him, and then when now that psychotic event happens, that's the first part, and it's called the exposition. So every movie has an exposition. But believe me, and I'll ask you this question again, and I know Agrippa is listening in. Edwin, I'll ask you, is it every movie that begins with the exposition? Like you just see the exposition first, or some movies bring the exposition at the end or somewhere?
Some movies bring the exposition either in the middle, and
Mm,
that's when probably you hear a lot of viewers saying the movie drags a lot. So they
mm.
can be, yeah, a movie can be able to hold the exposition maybe midway and have focus on the real events, and it will be more exciting and surprising. A lot of superhero movies actually, the story begins almost at the end. Then you want to
Exactly.
watch the next one. Yeah,
Exactly. So when you watch a movie that begins with the exposition in the beginning, that's a movie that we call a straightforward order, plot order. You're
uh-huh.
just telling events as they're following each other. But when you watch a movie like the ones now you're describing, that's called a twisted plot order. Because the parts of the movie are not following each
A
other the way
twisted
they
plot
should.
order.
Yeah, so you're twisting it, you're introducing what we call twists and turns in your plot to create suspense or surprise or other elements of making a movie interesting. Have you seen that? Yeah, so I hope you've understood that, the exposition part. So the second part of a movie, and actually, just to let you guys know, the exposition is the one of the shortest part of a movie. You don't want to waste a lot of time giving us the exposition of your film because it's not part of the main story. As you've all realized, that's just like a teaser to bring us into the main story or an introduction to the main story. So when you're making a film, it's important for you to tell yourself that I'm going to spend more time talking about my main story rather than spend more time talking about my side story. So that's very, very important. Then the other thing, which is very, very important and should be looked into, is the fact that as you're continuing to do whatever you're doing, in the film industry, you need to know that there's a stage called rising action. Now, this is the stage where you tell the main story of the film. In news, when I was doing journalism, in news, they used to refer to such a stage as the body of the news story. They're able to actually help you to, be able to show it as a body of your story. Now, this is very important for you to know. It's the story. You see, in the rising in the and sorry for the delay because I'm typing. I just want you to follow along, and I couldn't upload my presentation because I'm using the phone. So I just want to make sure that I name those parts and you're able to see them. So give me a second to just type that. Rising action is very important, and the rising action is the second part of your film. and it's the longest part of your film because this is where you actually tell the movie story. So it's very, very important, because if you miss out on the rising action, then we won't know what your story was about. So this is where you explain to the viewers what happens after the complication happens, and it's a very key part of the plot of your movie, because it helps you to actually be able to show people, so how does the story proceed from the beginning, the complication in the beginning. Let's say, for example, a couple got married, and then they got an accident and one of them died. So the whole story now has to turn into twists and turns, because the story is about the death of the spouse and how this other spouse is surviving, and whether the death was planned by someone, whether the accident was a natural accident, and now you start to introduce these secondary complications. And as I said, one of my favorite film teachers of all time, his name is Dove Siemens, and his school is called the Hollywood Film Institute, and he does a lot of online training, and I've been following his teachings. And one of the things that he said that really boggled my mind, he said every movie has 5 OOs, 5 O sheets, and 1 Oh my God in it. And these 5 OOs, 5 O sheets, one Oh my God in it are actually in the rising action. These are things that now are complications. Think about this. You want to tell a story, and then you've introduced the story nicely. But if you don't continue introducing complications in the life of your main character, who is your hero, then we're not going to be enjoying the movie. Because if you don't keep giving him challenges, keep giving him enemies, or all these things that you need to give your main character so that we can keep in tune, then we are not going to be able to really enjoy the film as you're telling it. So it's very important also for you to actually be able to do these things, be able to introduce some complications. So I'll give you some example, and Edwin, I'll also ask you to identify for me some of the examples you've seen in other movies, how the filmmakers introduce complications. And I'll put it straightforward like this: filmmakers are the biggest liars, and they're the biggest waste. They can waste your time. If you don't know, a filmmaker will be very glad to waste your time. Don't you agree? As a filmmaker, what you're doing, once you tell that story and you introduce it, what you're doing is actually wasting the viewer's time, because what you're doing is to keep them watching for 90 minutes, being intrigued, and just enjoying the movie. And what you're doing is, like, let's say, let me mention Prison Break or 24. Let me use 24 for this sake, and it's a series. So if you're using like 24, you'll realize like Jack Bauer is the main character of 24. And therefore, Jack Bauer, being a very, good, detective, police detective, he's catching criminals. But you have to put him through a lot of pain for him to be able to catch one criminal. And you see, the format which 24 uses is that they have a new episode with a new story. So it's just like mini movies that make the series. So it's not like one challenge is continued in the next episode. And when you watch movies, even when you watch the Wakanda Forever movie, and you're going to see, or the Black Panther, you're going to see there is a main character. His name was Chala, but his life was not without challenges. He had to face a lot of challenges and overcome them. And that's what, the conflict of the story is covered in the rising action. And as I've said earlier, the rising action is the biggest part of your film. Let's say if you're making a 60 minutes film, then 50 minutes would go to the rising action, and then 10 minutes would go to the other parts of the film, or at least 45 minutes. So this is a place where when you're making a movie, you have to think about your character, and the character drives the story. So you have to think about your main character, and you have to tell us the story with the direction of the main character. So we keep seeing the main character a lot on your screen, and that part is called the rising action, which is the second part. So in that part, there's some common things that happen. and I'm going to put this as an interactive discussion. I don't know, Edwin, whether you've seen, like in an action film, during the rising action, who is usually winning? Is it the hero or the antagonist? Eh?
It's always the antagonist, the villain, the bad guy is always winning.
Yeah, he's always winning. And how do you feel as a viewer when the bad guy is winning?
You
Because
feel a
viewers
bit,
mostly support the hero. Or
you
do you
feel
support the hero or the
sympathetic.
antagonist when you're watching a movie?
You tend to feel sympathetic to the hero, and
Mm.
you're wishing and hoping that at least he wins the fight.
Yeah. So, but do you see what filmmakers do? Like they try to introduce challenges and waste the viewer's time
Over and
until
over. True.
you get. So that's what we call the five OOs, five O sheets, and one oh my God. That means you see a movie is like a zigzag, it goes up and down. If you've ever noticed, in a movie it's just like real life. In real life we don't have challenges 24/7, isn't it? So you'll find the hero at one point he's almost dying, at the other point he's found love, then at the other point these guys are coming after him again, they're coming after his loved ones, then again he defeats them, he gets to safety, then when you're thinking it's over, then another challenge is introduced and another challenge is introduced. But as a filmmaker, if you see how filmmakers do it, they keep increasing the intensity of the challenge that they're giving the good guy as they write their story upwards towards the end. So it keeps building up. And that's why I can explain Dove Siemens, five OOs, five O sheets, and one oh my God, as a way of making the challenges keep going, getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So after you say five OOs, which come from the viewer after watching the movie, you should also be able to say five, oh shit, oh shit, I didn't expect that. Then you say, oh my God. And when you say that, it leads to the climax of the story. So the third part of a movie story is called the climax. And I hope you've understood the second part correctly. If you have, just let me know that you have. So if you have any questions, because I don't want to take you so fast. Have you understood the second part of the movie, which is the longest?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay. So you have any question on that before I go to the third part? So that's this is what I'm calling the five part dramatic structure. It's a dramatic structure, and as you can see, it's a part of cinematic language because it's part of the way, or it's like a formula. You know, like when you're doing mathematics, there's a formula to arriving to something, right? So I find the five part dramatic structure sort of like a formula because it helps you to be able to focus on telling people the story without any missing parts in your story. I don't know whether you've ever watched a movie, Edwin, and being able to find that there's something missing in this movie, either the ending or the rising action was rushed, or have you watched a movie and felt like that?
I'm trying to think of one. I think I would go back to the continuation story of Jurassic Park.
Okay.
Um, yeah, the Jurassic Park 2 felt a bit distant from the story from Jurassic Park 1 in some
Okay.
sense. Yeah, that probably it's because of what maybe I was expecting to see. But I think that's
Mm.
one of the movies I felt, yeah, there was something missing.
They should have added maybe some more twists and turns, and maybe they could have got your attention, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
So- and maybe they didn't have consistency in the twists and turns
and the
as
twists and
compared.
turns.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah,
Yeah. So you'll find that viewers will notice these small things that are done because they come to watch a movie with expectations. Sometimes they come back to watch a movie like what you did because they already think that if they come back to watch, they are going to see some certain story. And that's why people were really, curious about Wakanda Forever, because after watching Black Panther, and then now your Chala is dead, definitely he's not gonna, come back, because he's really dead, naturally dead. And so we were all looking forward to see how the director of the Black Panther will be able to save that story, because to us Chala was more than life character, and I think they were able to really save the story and maintain the name of Chadwick Boseman in the story, but they were really able to take the story forward, and now we are moving on. They were able to take us through that transition, and therefore they were able to bring the complications that come up with such a transition. And for me, one of the most intriguing parts of what they did was being able to make the actors in the movie feel the same way we, the viewers, were feeling. So the actors in the movie themselves, through their actions and everything, they had a hard time adjusting to the fact that the Black Panther is not Chala. They were confused. They were going through that journey. And I feel like that is where he nailed it, the director Ryan Coogler, because he was really able to pick what the viewers are feeling and bring it on screen through the actors and give us that transition. So I believe after Wakanda Forever and the way it ended with a cliffhanger, I believe now he will come back with a totally juicy story, and he'll have given us a chance to mourn, Chala, and not feel like we are being rushed to go to the next episode. So filmmakers have to be very creative in the way they build their rising action of their story, because that's the story actually. And then the climax is the turning point. I've asked you, Edwin, that when you watch a movie, who is winning in the beginning of the movie? And you've said it's the bad guy who's winning. Now, when we reach the turning point is that point where, the filmmaker gives the viewers a chance of hope that the good guy has a chance to win. So that's where the good guy starts winning. I don't know whether you've identified this part in any movies, Edwin. Any movies that you have identified at a climax? Give me an example.
Um, I would say a lot of DC and Marvel
Mm,
films.
mm.
Take even Superman and even Spider-Man, Homecoming. There's always a lot of fights, and he's always beaten up, and you even think maybe this is the end of Spider-Man. Then
Mm.
miraculously, there is probably a chemical or a notebook or an item that he finds from the past that gives him a solution, and he always gets a way of winning at the end of it.
Great.
Like I
But when
think
he's
the one I remember one is he went back in time to change the events of
mm,
what had happened. The world had ended, and he
mm.
actually had believed that he had killed all his friends, the whole league. So he went back in time and he changed the events, and that was the turning point of okay, game on.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's an amazing example you've just given. That moment when he was changing the events from the past changed the fortunes for him, right? They gave him a new lease of life. They
Yes,
made
he
him
did, and yes, he did.
yes. So that is climax, and it's a very small part in a movie, but it's very important, because that's the part where you start giving us hope or giving us a direction. Who will win in this story? And I just want you to write down this, and it's very important that movie stories are based on conflict. So whenever you're making a movie, it's based on a conflict. So it could be the conflict could be, between maybe two people who are fighting about a drug zone, or a police, rogue police officers fighting against some witness who witnessed them do bad actions. It could be anything. It could be some people fighting for a woman or for a man, and the conflict is between the good guy and the bad guy is in that. So movie stories are driven by conflict, and therefore it's a game of who wins and who loses. So when we reach at the climax, it's the turning point where we start seeing how the story might end. And normally that's when the good guy starts winning. Although there are some few film producers who just like to be different. And I don't know whether you watched a movie, Edwin, where the bad guy has won and the good guy has lost. I don't know whether you've watched a movie like that. Have you?
Yeah, some turn out to be different.
Yeah, and in movie, basically we use a principle called of, we use a principle or a saying that good shall prevail over evil. But some people believe
Over
that
evil,
evil shall prevail over good. So again, there are some few people in the cinematic world that have been
over
able
good.
to make sure that the evil person wins. I'll give an example of, personally for me, the movie. I don't know whether you've watched the movie The Perfume. Have you watched The Perfume, by any chance? Okay, so if you watch that movie, it's about this psychotic guy who kills women, and he was targeting virgins, and
Sorry,
he wanted to.
I didn't hear that. Hmm.
Did you watch the movie The Perfume? Hello? Hello, can you
No,
hear
no,
me?
I haven't.
Oh,
I'll add it to my watch list.
yeah, so that movie, The Perfume, and I don't mean to spoil it for you.
Yes, I can hear you. I haven't watched The Perfume.
Yeah, but I don't mean to spoil it for you, but I'll use it as an example. In that movie is it's about a psychotic guy who goes around killing virgins, 12 virgins, to make up the best perfume in the world. So he would sniff. He has an extraordinary
All
sense
right,
of smell,
go ahead.
and he yeah, and so this guy would sniff. He would sniff at the virgins, the 12 virgins, and he would go after them, kill them, peel their skin, and get the perfume off their skin. It is very horrific, just to say the least. And at the end of this film, the way this guy dies, he dies because people love him, because he makes this beautiful perfume, extraordinary perfume, and people hug him, and so many people hug him until they kill him without knowing. But it's not like he dies because people hate him, because he's really a bad guy. He dies because people love him so much and they all want to hug him. And I find that movie because it's like it's not driving the story of good shall prevail over evil. He doesn't pay for his actions. No justice is served for the girls. He just gets away with it. And I hope, Edwin, you can hear me. I'm sensing like there's some delay.
Loud and clear, Rachel.
Okay, so you find that in that movie, there is no justice served at the end, and therefore you just find that the filmmakers decided to deviate from the normal, which is okay. We are creatives, and sometimes some creatives are different and they don't fear to express themselves the way they see the world. So just because you're a Christian or you're a Muslim or you're a Hindu and or you're an atheist, there's some other people who are even worse than that, and they believe in different things, and they will try to bring those things in the screen, and those things sometimes sound so weird. And therefore, when I'm talking about filmmaking, what I'm trying to say is I can't teach you how to make a film, but however, I can tell you what many filmmakers have done and how many filmmakers, actually majority of filmmakers, are able to drive their plots. Although, as I say that, I like to be very factual and say there's some exceptions to this kind of things that happen. Now, let's move to the next part. So the turning point is where the good guy starts winning, the hero starts winning. But then there's another part in the film that is called the falling action. Now, the falling action is a very important part in the story, because the falling action is the part where you let the bad guy to throw his last kicks, Obviously, I don't know whether, Edwin, you've noticed that the bad guy will always throw his last kick. He'll always try to win again. Have you seen that in a movie?
Yes, I have, and even to an extent that the good guys even combine efforts to defeat the bad guy.
Exactly. So that is called the falling action,
Action.
because it's the place where you let him throw his last kicks and then you tell us the ending of the story in the falling action. So it's the fourth part and it's very important. Again, it's not as long as the rising action, it's a small part. It's normally almost the same time. You give the same time to it as the beginning. Okay, so it's just like something that you want to show the viewers, hey guys, this is how, people now, this is what happens to the people now. They're falling, the bad guy is falling, the good guy is clearly winning. And in this part you must tell us the end of your story, which is, who wins and who loses. So give me an example of a falling action in a movie that you've watched, Edwin. An example.
An example of a falling
A falling.
action, I'd
Yeah.
go back to the classic action film by Bruce Lee. This is the Enter the Dragon. There's a final
Yeah.
fight that he has with I think it's called Bodo, the bad guy. I think he was the most feared fighter in that region, in that territory. And there's a final fight they have, and he
Yeah.
regains his respect, and he comes back and he's respected by his people because he was abandoned.
Yeah, that's a very good falling action. And I'll give you another one for the Gladiator movie, where the gladiator himself, Maximus, had a fight with the king at last. And fight, in that fight, he killed the king, and therefore he was able to save his people as well. So there's so many, and you see them in the movie. So when you're making a movie, there's those parts that have to fall into place with each other, and that is called the falling action. That is the ending of your movie. And I'm sure, Edwin, are you wondering what's the fifth part, if we have already known who wins and who loses? So what is the fifth part? Are you wondering at this moment?
I'm wondering what it is called, because again, the falling action feels more of the end of the story. So if
Yeah.
there's another part of it, I'm not too sure which is it.
Yeah, so there's another part. It's called the denouement. However, as I say, I type the name of this part. You need to know that the denouement is only there if you're not going to have the movie will not have a continuation. Because when the movie will have a continuation, you usually end with a cliffhanger. But when the movie will have a continuation, then you can have will not have a continuation, then you can have a denouement. And a denouement, basically, this is what it is. It is a part of the movie where you explain what happens after the ending of a story. So what happens? Let me give you an example. In Prison Break, and I hope, as I'm using Prison Break, have you watched Prison Break, so that I use a movie that you've watched?
Yes, yes, I have. Yes, I have.
Yeah, so when you watch Prison Break, even when Scofield dies, we are still told, there's that last part where we are told what happens after his death, right? Because we want closure. We want closure. We want to know, where did T-Bag go? Where did Scofield go? And we are told that Scofield has a child. We are able to see the child going to the grave of Scofield. So we know Scofield died eventually from his disease. And then we see his wife and we see his child. And that gives us closure as to the ending of the story. We are able to see T-Bag, who was really the crazy one. We're able to see that he's back in prison. So by knowing that, then we're able to have full closure of the story. So you need to explain to us as a filmmaker what happens after the ending of a story. So for instance, let me go back to my initial story that I was telling you. This couple, now I'm going to build the story up. This couple that got married, they were driving off with a car written just married, and a few yards down the road they crashed, and one of the partners died and the other partner was in the hospital. So when the other partner woke up, she realized that her husband was actually killed, and the car was actually hit, and she was also supposed to be killed. And she realizes the person who was trying to kill them is going to come after her. So, of course, she starts hiding, and she faces all these complications with these people chasing after her because she's the main witness of this murder, and they don't want her to pursue the murder. And she keeps, running and running. Then, towards the climax of the story, she gets some help from a detective who's able to identify these criminals, and they set them up, and one of the criminals is arrested. So we start going towards the turning point. This girl starts winning because the other criminals try to blackmail her through her family and try to fight with her. Then they're not able to really fight with her because all the police forces and the detectives have come on board, and they're able to arrest all of them, and they're able to arraign all of them in court, and all of them are sentenced to a life sentence in prison. Okay, so what happens to the girl after that? That is the denouement. So what happens to this woman after that? She settles. She takes 2 years to heal, or maybe she just finds another love of her life, and she gives birth because maybe she was pregnant or something like that, and that's what we call the denouement. Are you getting the gist of what a denouement is now, Edwin? It's just an explanation of what happens after the movie. And I think some people even put words. Have you ever seen that? Some people writing graphics. Have you ever seen that? Hello? Hello?
Like to be continued, and also to be continued, and hello.
Yeah, you've seen to be continued. Yeah. Hello? Hello? Let me just open the door as you continue.
I
Just
can
tell
hear
me.
you.
Yeah, just tell me what
Okay.
you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, you'd find they have graphics to show a denouement in a way that you'd know there's a next movie coming through, and it would be a very few seconds at the end of
Yeah.
the movie, to give you
Yeah.
an idea of what to expect, or rather what to anticipate in the next
Yeah. Yeah.
episode, or in the next series, in the next movie.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I'm
that's what we call.
I'm trying to remember the denouement in Wakanda Black Panther 1, because I'm going to
Yeah.
watch Wakanda Forever, the second one today in the evening.
I
So
don't
it would be interesting to connect the two.
I don't want to spoil for you, so I'll tell you the denominator.
Yeah, I watched
Um,
your review, by the way. It was good.
yeah, so I don't want to tell you right now because it will be a spoiler. But after
Yeah.
you watch it, we can have this discussion. It has a great denouement, by the way. That's why in my video I said that
Yes.
this, when you watch, please, after you watch the credits, wait until the
Yes.
credits, and then you will see the denouement, and it's amazing. It just gives you hope and gives you something to anticipate, and you're 100% sure that there's going to be Wakanda 3, and a Wakanda 4 maybe.
Mm,
The way they're doing it is
interesting.
really amazing, because also the Marvel book in itself is a series. So basically, those are the dramatic structures of a film. And with that, I hope I've been able to cover very well the plot order issue, and I've also been able to cover the dramatic structure. Now you understand that a movie has a dramatic structure. Are
Structure.
you understanding that? Yeah, and you're now able to see what filmmakers do. And just to contextualize it for
Yeah.
you,
A question on denouement.
yeah. Yes, Edwin, go ahead.
Is there a way? So you've mentioned the different denouements, but is there a way to be able to pick out the denouement at the end of a film, to be able
Mm.
to tell that there's a continuation of the story.
Exactly, exactly. You could pick out a denouement that tells you, like the denouement for Wakanda Forever, that tells you it's a cliffhanger. The denouement is the cliffhanger. It does not finish all the answers. It leaves you with some answers pending. So you want to watch more of it. You get my point. But if
Okay,
somebody wants to close, they just tell you what happened to everyone and they leave
I
it.
do.
That's why
Yeah, I get you.
personally, that's why personally I believe like a movie like what was it? This movie in a series like Prison Break. I believe they can resurrect it if they want. They left us with a cliffhanger. Because when you do leave us with a son of Scofield and then his brother is still alive, then you get to see that really for sure that this movie might continue one day. You get my point, and that's why they even had a chance to make the Prison Break movie itself. So it's really amazing how some people play around with the denouement, and as small as it might sound, it's a very important. Don't you agree with me? It's an important part because it determines whether you can have episode 2 or episode 3 or episode 4, isn't it? So it's very, very important. Hello?
Correct.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, the other thing I wanted to touch on today, because I want us to go up to 11, is I want us to touch on another element of cinematic language that is very, very key and that I think should be also embraced when you're like making a film. And this is very important. You know, every film must have something that we call a setting. So Edwin, if I told you setting, what does that mean to you? Setting.
When I hear of setting, I think of one, the geographical, geography, the
Mm-hmm.
landscape,
Mm-hmm.
the place, the kind of weather, and the time. Time is important because is it the 90s? Is it BC or so a lot of aspect to do with time and probably also costume of the characters would also give a good feeling of the setting. Hello, Rachel. Seems it disconnected.
This app sometimes can mess you up. Yeah, that's why I don't like to use it a lot. Yeah. So I'm saying, you're right in the way you described. I heard you describing the setting. The setting is actually the space and time where an event in a movie happens. Simple as that. There, have you gotten it? The space and time where a movie event
Yeah,
happens.
the space and time, the events that happen. Yeah,
A movie event happens, not many
occurs
movie events,
or event
but
happen.
one movie event happens. And the reason why I'm saying that it's very important is because every scene, which is every location of a movie where a particular event is happening, usually has its own setting. Okay, one could be day, and the other one could be night. So in films, how we communicate also a lot through the setting. When you're making an action film or you're making a documentary film, one of the things you'll want to do is to make sure that you're able to actually tell us what is the setting. Because if you're able to tell us about the setting of your film, then we are able to actually understand the actions that can happen in that particular kind of a setting. So can you tell me an example of a setting that you've seen in a film, Edwin? Edwin?
I would, I would, I would, I would refer to the Netflix series Snow Train. Is it called the Snow Train? So these guys, um, something happened and the whole of the earth froze. So it was
Mm-hmm.
inhabitable. You couldn't live on earth anymore. But there was an engineer who had constructed a train that could withstand the freeze, and it would keep on rotating the earth, just fighting
Mm-hmm.
the the cold, and they have supplies. So the setting is inside a train. So the whole
Mm-hmm.
series is inside the train, and there are different cabins and there are different classes, and so they show everything in the train. So I think the setting was really fantastic because you could really be in the move. Then the train is moving, so in the mind, you're almost in that scenario of the events. Yeah, because they keep on showing how the train is going round and round, and it becomes a bit chaotic in the end. Yeah.
Edwin, I'm so sorry. I've been fluctuating with internet. That's why I don't like this app. You see why I like Google Meet? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it's much easier to work with because this one is a bit, it's a live streaming software. So sometimes when the internet fluctuates, it will just stop. But yeah, can you explain what you're explaining to me because I lost a bit of it, the setting? Yeah.
The so it's a Netflix series called Snow Train,
Mm-hmm.
and actually it's called the Snowpiercer. The
Mm-hmm.
Snowpiercer is a train that was constructed by an engineer where the Earth, in this setting, the Earth became inhabitable and everything froze. And so guys had to, you had to buy a ticket, to board this
Mm-hmm.
train that would be of the last survivors that are escaping, the cold. So the whole series is set up, is the setting is inside the train, and they keep on showing the train moving. So in your mind as a viewer, you keep on moving with them. They show you the different cabins, and the different cabins have different amenities. And there's an engineer, and there's like a caste system. So I think they did really well having the setting in a movie, in a train, in a moving train. That really
Yeah.
helped in the story.
Wow. And when I think about what you've just shared in that Snow White movie, I'm just thinking about the movie
Snowpiercer.
that we are about, which is like a science fiction. And I'm thinking about it right now, and I'm thinking about it's the same. The soil goes extinct. Okay?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
this caveman comes up with a solution to make people
yeah.
live for 200 years before the soil comes back. Don't you think it's interesting that from Africa we are
Very
producing such a.
interesting.
Yeah,
Very
and actually,
interesting. Yeah,
we are having, after this class, we are actually having a very big meeting with the team. It's the next class where we are discussing this and we are discussing the direction of the story. And I can't wait for that class as well. But you can see the setting is very important because you have to ask yourself one of the challenges we've had while developing our story, just like the way you said, the setting there was the train. The time, you've not brought out very specific timing because every scene has a different timing, right? There's one which
yeah,
is in the morning, there's one which is in the lunchtime. So every event that happens in a movie has different timings. So for you to be able to understand the setting in a better way, it's very important for you as a filmmaker to understand the events. A movie plot always has the events. Remember when I was talking to you about the plot in the beginning? I told you there's events that you will choose to focus on in your story, right?
yeah.
Can you
That's
hear
true.
me?
Yeah,
Oh
I
my
can hear you.
gosh. Let me just try to. I don't know what has happened. Uh,
I can hear you.
So, Edwin, sorry, I'll avoid this app like a plague next time
Yeah,
because
you're back now.
when I'm using it using my phone, if somebody calls, I just go off, But if I'm using it on my laptop, it would be good. But my laptop is not working at the moment. I need to take it to someone to check it out. That's why. So actually, when you want to understand the
And
setting of
I
a movie.
noticed that's what was happening to me.
Yeah, yeah. So like when you want to understand the plot of a film, it's very important to get back to thinking about, the events. And we said every movie plot is made up of few selected, chosen events. So in a movie's plot, there's two types of events, and I'm going to talk about them, and then we're going to come back to the setting because they are related to the setting. Because the setting, we've said, is where an event in a movie happens. So you can see the time and place where
Happens.
an event happens. So for you to know that, there's the word event. So you need to understand a movie is made up of various events that happen. Just like your story or your life is made up of different events. Edwin, you've gone through a lot in your life since childhood kufikia mahali umefika, isn't it? Yeah. So there's a lot of events
Yeah,
that have taken place in your
have
life.
taken
And
place.
then,
Yeah.
yeah, and then now to make you understand even better, think about this. There's major events that happen in your life, and then there's also minor events. So if you think about it, the major events are the serious things. Without those serious things, you wouldn't be here today, isn't it? So tell me one major event in your life that happened. I think that could be your birth. Without you being born, would there be Edwin?
There wouldn't be any other story to tell.
So that's a major event. So
That was a
then
major
there's minor
event.
events that have also happened. So in your life in itself, you'll find there's major events and the minor events. That's why,
Events.
for example, I was using the story of a couple that got married and divorced in 7 days. So the first day when they got married, is that a major event or a minor event?
Well, getting married, that was a major event.
So that's a major event, isn't it? But on the second
Yes,
day, they're just good, they're just enjoying. Is that a major or minor event?
that's just a minor detail.
Then on the third day, they had an argument.
Major
Major or
event.
minor?
Very
Major event.
major. Mm.
On the fourth, they're reconciled and they are all good. Is that a major or minor event?
Minor, not it's mild. It's not
Fine.
it's not major. Yeah.
Exactly. Then on the fifth day, they have a housewarming party, which ends up disastrous. So that is one of the
Ma-
most major events as
Major
well,
events
right?
in the story.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then on
Yeah.
the sixth day, they're reconciled and they're just sitting and they're not talking to each other. It's minor, but not very minor, right? Hello?
True.
It's minor, but not very minor because it's
Yeah,
important to
that's
the
true.
plot of
It's
the story.
it's minor, but not very minor. Yeah.
Exactly. On
Yes.
the seventh day, they have a dinner, an amicable dinner over which they agree the best way to stay with each other is by staying away from each other. So that's when the divorce happens. Is that a major event or a minor event?
That's quite major. Very major event.
So, in a film, you'll find that any film narrative will have minor and major events. So, as a filmmaker, when you want to make a film, it's important to identify what are the major events in your story and what are the minor events. And I'll tell you why. Because this will
Events.
dictate a lot of things about how you're going to treat the major events and the minor events. So, for instance, when you're writing, will you give more pages to the major events or to the minor events?
More pages will go to the major events.
Yeah, obviously, more pages will go to the major events. Also, more screen time will go to the major events. Okay,
To the
and in
major
the major
events.
events, that's where you'll
Yeah.
place your main characters, isn't it? Main characters will be in those major events. Sometimes in the minor events, your main characters might take a break. You get my point. But in the major
Yeah.
events, you want your two main characters, that is the husband and wife, to be in all the major events because it's about them. Okay. So the other one could be like, okay, a friend comes and they're watching a movie. So it's not about them. You get my point. They're just cool.
Yes.
Or they're
Yeah.
talking to each other and you don't give it a lot of attention. So again, filmmakers have developed this film language, a cinematic language, where they dwell more and they give more time to major events than they give to minor events in the movie. The major events have a cinematic name. They are called hubs. HUB. Let me just type it real quick, if you don't mind, and then we're going to finalize the class from there. The major events are called hubs, and the minor events are called satellites. You know, satellite, like a satellite, a normal satellite that we use for TV and everything, a satellite dish.
Uh huh.
Yeah.
Satellite. Yeah.
Yeah, so minor events are called satellites. Major events in a film are called hubs. This is because as you're starting to get into filmmaking, it's very important for you to also start speaking in the film language because you're going to be working with the crew and other people, and you need to use the right words. So hubs refer to major events, and satellites refer to minor events. So a minor event important according to you in a movie's plot?
They're quite important because I feel I think the minor events support the major events. Without the minor events, the major events will not make sense.
Exactly. They are very important. They add value to the movie, they add color, they add drama to the movie plot, and therefore they make your movie look better. And these are the events that now you have to give time. Let me give you an example. And next time when we start this class, we'll now look at duration. Duration is also an aspect. I heard you mentioning duration. Duration is totally different, Edwin. And we are going to look at that. The story duration, the screen duration, and the plot duration. It's very important. And I'm going to introduce it a bit today, but we are going to start from there next time. But right now, we are talking about setting. Remember, the difference between duration and setting is the time that an event in your movie happens and the place where it happens. So give me an example of a setting, Edwin. Give me an example of a setting.
An example of a setting would be, I can't, was it 1980 something in Uganda during
No,
the
that's
Idi
not setting.
Amin?
That's
This
duration.
that's
Remember, it's
duration. So
place
space and
and
time,
time.
place and
Oh yeah, just continue. You could be right, and I get what you're saying. Try to tell me the
so
setting part, the place, and then the time.
this was when Idi Amin was ruling Uganda, and he was chasing the Indians away, and he was giving shops for free to Ugandans that time. So the movie about that whole time when Idi Amin was the president.
No, I think that is duration. Now you're confusing
That would be
duration.
duration.
Setting and time is
So
like
how would
hospital, day, library, night.
okay.
That is
So
the
at night.
setting.
Okay.
A particular event, not the whole movie.
Got
So
you.
the whole movie has its own duration. It has a plot duration, then it has a story duration, and then it has a screen duration. So duration is different. It's the total time covered by a movie, or the total time covered by various plot events in the movie, total. But now, when you look at the setting,
Understood. Mm.
it's a space and time where a particular event in a movie is happening. Let's say event number one is the day they get married. So where is the event happening? In a church. What time is it happening? It's happening during the day. You can even specify and say morning. So that is what we call the setting. And remember, there's confusion between setting, duration, and scope. Okay? Scope is the total area covered by the movie. Like when you watch the movie The Godfather, it's covered America, it's covered Europe, okay? It's covered a couple of places in the world. All right. If you look at this movie, all out of Africa, it's covered Kenya and it's covered Britain. So you're able to see the scope is the total area covered by the movie, but the setting is very specific to a particular event in the film. So when does this event happen? And what happens during that particular event. That is very, very key to the setting. I hope you have understood that clearly. Edwin?
Yeah, that is well understood now. Yeah, yeah. It can be a bit
Oh,
confusing, but the distinction is clear.
yeah. So let me now talk to you very quick
It is
about
quite
duration.
understood now.
Yeah, yeah. So let me
Yeah.
talk to you quickly, introduce the duration, and then we are going to start from that because I always like to introduce or rather leave you in a cliffhanger so that you can go and think about what we are going to cover next time. So next time, now we're going to be looking at duration, the use of suspense and surprise, the use of characters in a movie story, and what we are trying to achieve in all this to make you understand the difference between a movie and a TV show. All right? Just make you understand the work that goes into really defining a movie as a film. And then after that, we are going to look at the people who work in a movie and all that. But before we go, I just want to introduce you to duration, which I've already explained. And I want to say this every movie has three durations. One is the story duration, the time in which you chose to show the story of Rachel. Rachel could be right now, I'm 37 years old, right? But you could choose to show the events of my life from when I was 18 years to 37. So that means then you're showing 19 years of my life, isn't it? 19 years. So when you go back to
Yeah.
19 years, you see when the story duration was, or what you were saying during the time when the movie for Idi Amin was based. You can go and tell us the duration of the story, and that affects how you will tell the story. If you tell us the story duration of your movie is in 1970s, then we expect to see Volkswagen, isn't it? We expect to see There was no mobile phones then. We expect to see the booths, yeah, the booths in your city. We expect just to see the landline telephone because that's what was happening. That's how people used to communicate. So that is the story duration, and it really affects the way you'll make the movie. Don't you agree? Even the fashion, it affects everything. How you're
It
going to
it
tell
does.
the
It
story.
affects everything. Yes.
Exactly. So we're going to look at how filmmakers have dealt with issues of story duration. Then there's plot duration, the time when particular events in a movie happened. Okay, so like if you are able to say, like a movie like the one you are talking, The Fall of Idi Amin, because it span across many years. You could say 1944, Britain, or 1944 Kampala. So that is a plot duration because you're picking a particular event in the main story duration and giving it a time. Have you seen such an example, Edwin? Have you been able to
Yes.
see
Yes.
an
Yes. Yes.
example?
It's evident.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
It's
listening.
evident in quite a lot of movies. I'm saying it's
Yeah.
visible in a lot of movies where they give you that scenario.
So are you able to give me an example for a story duration and then an example for um, a plot duration off the top of your mind in a movie that you've watched?
I'm trying to let me see which one. Hmm.
Can you tell me what you were telling me about Idi Amin? Is that story duration or is it plot duration?
For that was the story duration.
Was it a particular event in the movie or was it the duration of the entire story when it started?
The I was actually explaining almost the whole movie. So because I was thinking that was the kind of the setting I was confusing setting. So in that sense, in the Idi Amin movie, I would say the the plot duration is when Idi Amin when the movie starts with Idi Amin being in power up to when he
Yeah.
was being ejected from power and he was escaping Kampala after being fought away. That's the plot duration. Then there's a point where he organizes a safari rally event, and
Mm-hmm.
he takes a wife from a man and he makes sure the man is killed. That that scene, that's a story, that's a plot duration.
Yeah, so the first one is the story duration. Then the second one,
Story
the first
duration, yeah.
example is story duration, and the
And
last
the
example you've
event
given
in
is
the story is a plot
yeah,
duration. Yeah.
you get. So it's just any event you pick in the plot and you give it a time. And mostly filmmakers will even write the time. They'll write, let's say the story is between 1920 and 1960. So they write 1945. Like I think Martin Luther King movies, they do that a lot, if you've seen, because he had
Yeah,
this
they do.
wisdom. Filmmakers who are telling his story, they just like to say the time and place where he was, and they really use this. And I think, it's very important. And I think you're starting to watch movies from another. Are you changing the way you're watching your movies nowadays after attending YFP classes?
Everything everything is different.
Because now when you see that,
I even now
you
want to put the phone off.
you want to put the phone off.
Yeah, yeah, because I figured people don't watch movies. People just they skim through.
Yeah, yeah. So you want to put the phone off and really experience the movie, really understand
Yeah,
what somebody's trying to tell you. Like if you watched my review, it was all ideological, right? It was not even
it
about the
was.
camera. It was
No.
very ideological. It was all about the characters because the way when I was watching that movie, that's the angle which I used to watch it. You say, because I was like,
Yeah.
this story is than technicals. The story in itself is very big for us as African people, and therefore I just chose to understand the story that this person was trying to tell instead of looking at the cinematography, editing, and all that. Of course, it has some annoying things in technicals, a few things, but I didn't focus on that because all that don't show up for you because you really get in touch with the story and you forget to look at the technicals. So that's very important. And the last kind of duration is the screen duration, where it's uh it's what time does that do you have to show this movie? Is it 90 minutes or like that? And in which part of the movie does a particular event have to show? Is it in the first minute, 10 minutes, 20 minutes? You get my point. So that is called the screen duration. So if you're told to make a 90 minutes
The
movie, the
screen
screen
duration, yeah.
duration will be 90 movies. Yeah, and in that 90 movies you can even go deeper and see how the events have been arranged in a twisted plot order and how the dramatic structure has been done, and then you can get to really understand movies and understand how you can be creative with your film when you're making it. So with that said, Edwin, I'm going to finish the class here. Agrippa, I'm very sorry that he had to drop out at some point, but I'm very happy that we recorded this because he can watch it and he can ask me any questions that he has. So I'm very happy that we were able to do this. So Edwin, I'll just take your main takeaway of the day, and if you have any questions, so that we can end the class there and we'll take it over next time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rachel. I would say my key takeaway is the different aspects of the film in terms of the dramatic sequence and the dramatic effects. Even learning about the different parts from the exposition, which is more so the introduction of the film, up to the denouement, where you get to know if there's a continuation or not. Then also learning about plot duration and story duration and the difference, and also the difference between a setting and a plot. Yeah, I think that now being clear in my mind, I won't be confusing the two. Yeah.
Great, great. And I hope you can take some time through the week to think about the things we've been learning, from the way the camera is important and everything. And basically, when I'm introducing my students to film, normally what I do is to try to make them understand the concept. And maybe I'd ask you, are you thinking that now you're starting to understand the concept that is film? You're starting to understand what film is.
I would say yes. I am having now a much more clear understanding of what film is and what it entails, but more
Yeah.
so the elements that make a successful film. Now I can be able to see why some films don't do very well and others do
Yeah.
very exceptionally well because you're giving examples in the classes.
Okay, okay, that's good. So thank you very much then, and I hope to see you guys during the week. I think I want us to move a bit faster in the makeup classes, so we'll arrange and see whether this week we can try to squeeze in 2 classes during the week, and then do one more class on Saturday, so we can move faster. With that said, I wish you a good small break until 11:30 when we are coming back for the next filmmaking class. Take care and bye bye.
Bye bye.